Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Growth Show. I am extremely happy to have Laurence Krieger with me today, the CEO of Tide. Laurence, thanks for coming on board.
Pleasure to be here.
Great. For the people at home, could you give them a background on you and sort of the mission at Tide at the moment?
Yeah, of course. So I'm CEO of Tide UK. So Tide, currently our business is in the UK, and I run the UK business. We've talked about how we're going to expand out. So this is public knowledge now. We are going to our next market this year, which will be India. We are on a mission, and we are now the biggest challenger banking product in the UK. So if you look at all the banks who look after SME, we are the biggest in the SME sector in the UK, under the top 5, so just under Santander. And we're on a mission to give businesses and business owners back their time. So that's really what we're all about. And the way we do that is we're building a business financial platform that doesn't just provide banking, but provides a whole suite of other services in order to solve all the business financial needs of a SME. And that's how we've scaled very rapidly. As I said, we've just been in the UK to date, but we're launching in other markets, and currently we're rapidly gaining market share. And if you look at our numbers in the UK, 1 in 20 businesses bank with Tide today.
Wow.
And that's increasing, yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations to you guys. And what's your background? What's your journey to this point been?
So my background is in tech. So I've been working really since '94, since I left university. I graduated in '94, and from my point of view, I came into like this new horizon, this new arena of the internet. It was essentially the birth of the World Wide Web back in 1994. And my friends, they were all going into banking, they're going into law, they're going into consulting, and I just saw that there was something amazing about the internet, and I guess very grateful that I made that decision. But yeah, so it was quite an interesting time. So in 1994, it was very much the beginning, and therefore I guess what's led me to this is I've worked with tech businesses since '94, since that move into the wide world of working, and my path kind of got into payments since 2005. So I was back in 2005. I was working for Yahoo. I started at Yahoo in 2000, really in the early days when Yahoo was the #1 website worldwide. Obviously, we know the story there with Google, but back then, Yahoo was #1, and I saw there was this interesting piece, which was payments. So I started working in digital payments, which has now become rebadged and rebranded fintech, but back then it was called payments, far less sexy. So I've been on this journey with payments since 2005, and that's what led me to Revolut, and then led me to Tide.
Yeah, and within that journey, you've experienced a number of things. You've been COO, you've understood from a sales point of view. How does that journey, how's that all culminated in the position you are today? What's the key bits you've taken away from those experiences?
Yeah, so I think if I look at like my experience, I really have brought a number of things. I guess I've learned a number of things on the way, and one of the things that I've learned is obviously the business. So the fact that I'd already been in the payments industry, I was working as a consultant in the payments landscape before I got to Revolut, really helped me understand how all these pieces are wired together. So what's become known as neobanking today, actually under the hood, a lot of the components, be it wallet infrastructure, core banking infrastructure, card infrastructure, all the pieces that fit together to form the product, the core product, was there before. It was just it was called payments, and it was called different things, but essentially that architecture, that infrastructure was there. So I think one of the big things was that I'd had like very deep knowledge of how the product works. And then I think for me, two things. I think firstly, I've along the way, I've worked with both large businesses, businesses like Yahoo, but I've also run my own businesses. So I know what it's like to be a business owner. And I think being a business owner, and I've done that multiple times, and even during the dot-com boom, I had a couple of internet businesses back then. Being a business owner, it gave me empathy, and I think that's really how I got to Tide, having that empathy for the SMEs. But B, also it teaches you to be incredibly commercial and incredibly agile. And I think those are two things that have always stuck with me on that journey. So when I came to Revolut, I had very much that kind of flexible, agile mindset, and also the very commercial mindset. And I think that really helped me to see beyond, I guess, what was the norm, and to start to look at what could be possible, what could businesses like Revolut, like Tide do, using the same infrastructure, using the same payment apparatus that we always had, but it was basically applying them in different ways. And I think that's really where I guess I've added most value. And then that, in addition to that, is just being able to scale. And I think for me, having a scale mindset is what I bring to the table, or what I bring to work on a day-to-day basis, because these businesses that I've been associated with and I've led have been incredibly scaled businesses. We've gone Tide from when I was there 4 years ago. I was actually reflecting on it today. We were a few people and a few customers, and now we've got a few 100,000 businesses, and we're rapidly gaining share. And by the end of this year, we'll have 1,000 employees. So it's having that scale mindset is really important as well.
Yeah, and how as you scale, how do you stay close to the customer? Like how do you ensure you're always customer first?
Yeah, so I think that's an incredibly important point. And in my role, I've been COO, as you said, and I've also been Chief Product Officer and now CEO. Any great tech business really has customer at front of mind. You look at any successful tech business, that's really ultimately got to be your philosophy, your mentality. Otherwise, what are you building, or how are you prioritizing? So very much at Tide, the way we think about it is purely through data. So one of the things we do is obviously we survey, we research, we look at what the customer needs are. And that's how we think about our product. And we really are there to solve a very ambitious challenge, which is really solving all the financial needs of an SME. And actually, if you look at that kind of wider ambition, really there is like a myriad of different things that a business owner has to do that's not core to their everyday business, but it's all the financial pieces, it's all the admin pieces that are associated with running their business that most business owners just don't think about, have to think about. So by bringing together that myriad of different financial and admin tasks and putting them into one service platform, that's really what we're trying to do. So on a very large scale, we're thinking about those needs, but then every single product feature, we really look at our customer base, and we think about what exactly will our members need. What we don't call them customers, we call them members, but what would they need, and how should we build a product that best fits them? That's on product. And then the other piece is that we're very, and this I've always done this, and this is also something that I did at Revolut and do at Tide, is very much focus on getting the pain point data as well. It's not just enough to think about the North Star and think about the great product that you want to build, but also you have to be kind of thinking long-term and strategically, and then you have to be thinking tactically. And the way you do that is you, again, through data. It's taking all the feedback data that you get, and it could come from many sources. So it could come externally through review sites, through various different external sources, plus internally through things like CSAT and NPS. You take all that data and you distill it down, then you work out what your priority list is. What are the things that are most troubling your customers? What are the pain points, things that we need to resolve? And you work through that, you prioritize that, you work through that. That's also really another massive important piece of how you put your customer first.
Yeah, and obviously coming from, customer mindset, creative mindset, and operational mindset, what is your leadership style around this now? So when you identified the problems that need solving, or the North Star, how do you go about empowering the team to actually go and deliver that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest way you do that is you don't try and do it all yourself, and you don't try and centralize it all. So like a command and control, a centralized decision-making hierarchy just doesn't work.
Right.
And I think big businesses, big corporates have in the past failed to try to do that. So the way I look to deal with it is a decentralized approach. So you need to make sure that at the top you have a very clear strategy. So you've got to have a very clear mission, you've got to have a very clear vision, you've got to have a very clear strategy of where you're going as a business. But then you need to allow certain degrees of freedom from your team, with certain guardrails, by the way, to get on with it. And the way we build it, and this is tied, and I think it's something that is a pattern that works incredibly well, is we have VPs in different business areas, and those VPs are essentially like business owners. They run their businesses, they run their own P&Ls, they have their own teams, they have their own backlogs, they have their own products. And internally, we have service contracts as well. So teams can resource in and use other teams' enablement resources, but there's essentially a service contract there, as if you're an external business.
No.
By doing that, by empowering your management layer, by empowering them to really run and move fast, with a lot of autonomy, then allows you to do multiple things in parallel, and allows you to run at speed. Having said all that, obviously there are guardrails. It's very important to have a clear set KPIs, clear set OKRs, and have certain guardrails, so that what you don't have is people running into each other. And also what you want to do through your culture is ensure that you have very good values, whereby people aren't working in silos, they're working collaboratively. So there's a lot to get right, but it's an important point. And I think this is probably the biggest piece of leadership in a scale-up environment.
Yeah, so you're working almost on a utilization model, where you can just pull people into other projects and they will work collaboratively to talk to each other what's in the best interest of the overall goal, rather than this siloed approach around P&Ls and that's my guy and you can't have him and all this kind of stuff. So, but how culturally, how did you sort of embed that? Because that's quite a shift from the majority of other workforces.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is the collaboration, but at the same time, what you want to have is the autonomy. So what you don't want is like everybody sort of working, I guess, in a kind of kumbaya type way, in which we all sit around a campfire and we all hug each other. So I think it's important that each business area has their own very specific goals, and they have their own clear KPIs. And we do that through OKR setting and very clear deliverables and clear roadmaps. So that's incredibly important. And I think that in itself, having that in place helps to really focus the mind, but ultimately we're all paying into one common goal. So, there's company OKRs, there's company mission, there's a company strategy, and that's what everyone's paying into. And then the way you get collaboration is two ways, really. One is that you do it again through your values. So you make sure that you really embed into the culture what values you hold high, and our values are mission driven, which is like our member first mission driven value. It's also about being data driven, really using data to build your argument, not just going on whims. And then the other piece is about being one team. and we use those values also in our process of performance evaluation as well. So we think
Right.
about that when we evaluate people's performance. So it's very important to have that balance, and we work on that. But yeah, so I think it's something that it takes time, and you have to build it over time. And the other thing is you need to make sure that you enable your team. So really it's about empowering those teams to deliver, giving them what they need to deliver. And that often is in the form of money, which then they can invest. So enabling them to have their teams and them to have scale within their organization. And then the other thing is for me is just about being a servant leader. So like, how do you unblock? How do you make sure that when your team and your reports need things, you're there for them? That's critical.
Yeah, and what do you think the biggest challenge in scaling is? I mean, so you've got a roadmap ahead of you. You've been there. You've worked in some incredibly fast growth businesses. You've seen it before. What's the thing that sort of keeps you awake at night? Is it maintaining culture? What's the biggest issue around scaling for you think, in the future?
So I think as you go through, I mean, it's interesting. I've worked in various, as you said, startups to scale ups.
Yeah.
And you have very different front of mind. I would say front of mind strategies is more the word I would say. Like, how do you think about scale? And that very much depends on, as I said, what stage you're at. So like when I started at Revolut and started at Tide, it was right at the very, very beginning stage. Both companies were a handful of people in a co-location. And when you're doing that, scale is how do you get from 5 customers to 100 customers or 1,000 customers. And with both organizations, I've seen it on very high scale. Like, how do you then go to thousands of customers on a daily basis in terms of growth, and how do you deal with that? And it's been challenging. I mean, at Tide we've scaled massively during this last year, surprisingly. But we've done it because I think businesses have turned to digital players during COVID, because they can't deal with like that kind of I guess the friction and the human interaction and having to go and visit your branch. They need a fully digitized solution that helps their business grow, and that's really why we've been there for them during this period, and we've seen massive growth. And it's also been scaled during lockdown as well, which is incredibly. I mean, operationally, we've scaled like 3x in the last year.
Wow.
Our operational teams, all of which these new recruits have come on board during lockdown, so they've started at home, and there's specific challenges in dealing with that. But I think in terms of where you are in your journey, you will always be thinking about 2-3 steps ahead, and how do you scale to that next level. And at the moment, really, for me, it's about internationalization. So I'm wearing a hat of CEO, but I'm also as a leader in the business, thinking about how do I scale the business internationally. And what that is about very often is making sure that you have a single platform. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to build 2 different platforms or 3 different platforms in different markets, because it becomes a complete mess. So you want to have one single platform, which is very customizable, very scalable. And then the other piece is making sure that you have an operating model and you have very clear guidelines which don't change according to the market you're in. You have very, very clear blueprints. And obviously, if new data comes in, you change, but you want to make sure that there's consistency as much as possible. Otherwise, it becomes very, very challenging.
Yeah, I mean, you calmly say all that. That's incredibly hard. what you're setting out to do there, but well done to you guys so far. And how has Tide changed you? Like, how have you evolved over the 4 years? And how's the pandemic affected your sort of views?
So I think Tide has changed me in the sense that I've gone through, as you said, enormous scale, but I've gone through it in a time where there was, as I said before, external challenges that no one could ever predict. And I think, as I said to you already, like having an agile mindset is incredibly important, but I think it's been the most challenging time for all of us in the last year, and having to kind of scale with the macro environment around you has probably changed me, I would say, for the better. It's been tough, it's been incredibly tough, but the lessons you learn along the way is really puts you in these are life lessons, I think. And it's been an incredibly interesting period. So I think that that's probably I guess the biggest change I have. It's just being able to scale and deal with challenges through adversity and through things that we've never believed we could go through. But I think I obviously am not unique, not alone in that. And I think we've all been through this, right? And I think we'll all come out of COVID brushing the dust off us, and I'm hoping we will come out soon. Probably different people in some respects. I do think also, by the way, that it's taught me to appreciate the simpler things in life as well. I think having this experience for all of us, suddenly you realize actually you don't need a lot of the peripheral things around you, and family and friends and things that probably you took for granted more than anything before. You realize how important they are. So I guess that's less to do with time. That's just more of a personal reflection.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what we've seen in the last year. As far as obviously our members are concerned, I think that's been always our front of our mind. So yes, it's been challenging for us, but it's been even more challenging for our members.
Yeah.
For our customer base. And we've been incredibly focused on trying to help them as much as possible. So we've done that in numerous ways, through lobbying the government, through providing information. The thing I'm most proud of is Tide Charity, which is a charitable organization we set up as a separate entity. And it's really there to help businesses that are in need, that are in real crisis, to give them some additional cash flow when in times of need. So that's something we set up. Every single penny goes to charity. We've raised almost 200,000 so far for UK businesses. So I know it's a drop in the ocean, but it's something that we're proud of that we did, and we continue to do. But I think obviously there are so many businesses that have struggled, and there's been unfortunately so many casualties. On a lighter side, on a kind of more positive side, what I've seen is that I've seen phenomenal entrepreneurial spirit, and really at Tide, that's what we're about. We're about entrepreneurialism, and we're about really helping those businesses to thrive, not just survive. And it's been incredible, actually. I mean, I've seen so many cases of businesses, people that have just pivoted, that have gone into new things, because they've had to. And also there's been an incredible number of new businesses that have started up. And I think a lot of people who previously maybe have put it off, then suddenly find they have time in their hands, they're at home, they no longer had that commute in the morning, and therefore they can start putting some of their energies and some of their times into, that business they always wanted to start up. Other people have been forced into it, but yeah, there's been an incredible entrepreneurial spirit in the UK.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at a business like yours, which is obviously data-led when it customers, the data points have changed so much for your customers in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
So your ability to be agile, to redevelop products must have been so intense, especially the initial part of the lockdown stages.
Yeah, intense is probably the yeah. So it's been intense, and it's been a lot of work. But we're super lucky that our members and customers and businesses have gravitated to Tide during this period. We have a huge responsibility on our hands, and that's why, yes, it's been intense, but we've been on a mission, and we've been there to really work out how best to help, and how best to build this business financial platform that really helps our businesses succeed. So it's intense, but it's empowering and it's invigorating for the team, because really the team is what's driving all this momentum, and they have really put an incredible amount of effort, incredible amount of hard work into where we've got to in the last year.
Yeah, and I think, look, with the rate of growth you've gone through and the new hires you brought on is, yeah, well documented. It's brilliant. How do you think? I mean, I don't think anyone has the answer nailed on for this question yet. But how do you think the sort of digital culture, sort of the guy or girl's just joined your business, doesn't know you, sat at home, impacting you, but what's your thoughts about how you're going to keep it sticky? How are you going to keep the culture flowing through from someone having that experience?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to think about the culture during lockdown. I mean, culture is obviously important, so important anyway, but it's particularly challenging during this environment because everybody obviously is working remotely, and often people feel culture when they walk into an office, and often culture comes from, you know, the team together. So it's something that we've worked on, but it's something that it takes a lot of work, and something that we're not perfect at because it's incredibly challenging during this kind of lockdown period. One thing I would say is having very clear values and making those values identifiable and easy to access. I think it's also about making sure that we as a company overly communicate. So this is not just me, but it's all the leaders across Tide overly communicate. I always look at during this period as like you have to communicate 2x whatever you communicated before.
Yeah.
So like everyone else, I'm doing a lot of Zoom meetings, but so as you know, the other team members, so the other leaders at Tide, and we need to make sure that we keep that consistent and have a very, very clear communication at all hands, but all the way through the teams as well. So there's a lot of work to do there. Then, you know, the other thing is just making sure that you do have good team cultural meetings as well. So we think about our various different teams in terms of all parts of our culture. They're part of one culture, but they're also team culture. So you'll have, like, you know, the product team, you'll have the engineering team, you have the servicing team. So we have community of practice, and we have opportunities for teams to meet, and opportunities also for teams to have a bit of fun, and to do some kind of less work related and more kind of casual experiences as much as you can during this period. And then the other thing I think you have to do is also spend more time with individuals as well, especially those new individuals. So one of the things I need to do, it's one of the things that's on my list, is spend more time with new Tidings as they join, having a coffee with them, having a lunch with them. Nothing, you know, necessary about, you know, catch-ups of work. It's more to do with them, understanding them and talking about things in a much more of a looser way and much more of a friendlier way. And I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's the thing we're seeing from the majority of our leaders, is just adding that time, scheduling that time just to make time for others, just to connect, you know, just on a social level, to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, it takes work. It takes real work. Like, you know, our days are busy. Everyone being at home, wakes up at 7, works till 8. You know, it's easy to get carried away with being more efficient than it is actually just to make sure you're making time for people. That's been my experience, where I've just been, wow, wasn't that a great efficient day? And I realized I haven't spoken to 2 people or left the house or got any more sun, which I have not at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
What's final point, if you're passing on any advice to anyone, and let's go from a startup point of view, right? So you're in a pandemic, you're starting up, and one of the things that's very obvious for you guys is you build a brand, right? Like you really have. And I'm exposed to, especially to take payments, I'm exposed to hundreds of payments firms who are very secretive about what they're building, and then they hope an audience will be there. And I always felt with Tide, you were very visible from the start, even if I didn't even know you had a product, but it seemed like you were always there. I always wanted to go find out what's going on here. what's your advice to that sort of startup community? It doesn't have to be payments, it could be any sector, but right now, what would you be focusing on? What would you be advising them to be doing?
In terms of building a brand,
Yeah.
Getting noticed. Yeah, it's definitely hard these days to get noticed because there's so much noise out there. And obviously also we're mainly consuming through digital. As consumers, we're not out there in the wide world, as you said, not getting the sun that we probably need.
Yeah.
So it's increasingly hard, but I think in some respects it's also quite leveling as well for a startup. So if I was, creating a startup tomorrow, and maybe I didn't have, huge amounts of firepower in terms of advertising bucks, what would I do? And it is leveling. It's like, startups can't afford to do obviously tube campaigns and poster ads and TV campaigns, but really those kind of big advertising type levers aren't probably even that accessible today for most businesses. So what you're seeing is that you're seeing larger, more established businesses really taking to digital as much as possible, and really especially through social channels. So I think that's the big advice I have. It's almost like a level playing field right now. We all saw the Weetabix baked beans thing. That's genius. That's just a piece of great PR, but also it's just great growth hacking, creativity. And yes, it starts with an idea. You have to have those great ideas and you have to be able to get it out there. But really, it just took off from there. So I think that there are these opportunities today. And I think, as I said, it's almost like a level playing field now. And I would really, if I was starting up any sort of tech business right now, I would be thinking, how do I get myself noticed? And how do I use in particular social channels to do that? And then the only other thing is, and I've done this in multiple businesses, but you see this with Tide, is in the very early days, it's building a community. It's making sure that, we, as I said, we don't call our customers, we call them members. It's because we have a community. And if you can bring your customer along on that journey, then you turn them into also advocates, hopefully, as long as they're happy with your product. And that in itself is the best form of marketing. So I think those are probably my two pieces of advice. Yeah.
I think that community theme is everything. And again, very, very intensive to get right. You've got to actually want to listen. You've got to want the feedback, and you've got to be prepared to react to it. And that's that is again a very hard task. But that is great, Laurence. Thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are at the moment. So thank you for making time today. Thank you to everyone at home for tuning in, subscribing. It's going crazy. We appreciate all the support on this. Laurence, we'd love to get you back another time, because there's all of our leaders we're dealing with at the moment are having this sort of digital remote plans of how we connect people better. And I think just, the more the community shares ideas to make sure that the well-being of all our teams is looked after, the better, and people can feel connected and have a purpose. And you're absolutely doing that with Tide, or what do you call the Tidians? Is it Tidians?
Tidians, yeah. Well, those are our team. Tidians are our team, and customers are our members.
Members, right? Tidians. I like that. Well, Laurence, thank you so much, and thank you at home, and we will catch up again soon. All the best. Goodbye.